welcome back to the Obi-Wan channel. Here we are with the Junkyard Dawg 302060 once again. This time I am in the middle of putting the press fit rods, or pins rather, in the rods and piston. So I'm making a piston and a rod into an assembly. Okay, so a couple things before we get rolling here. First off, for those of you saying that, oh well, you're overheating your rods and you got bluing happening on your rod, which is what you're gonna see right here. See the color? Yep, blue. Yep. Okay, let me show you something. So years ago, I had this engine built, and these rods were done by a professional engine shop, and they actually had a Sun-in rod heater. Now I have used one before, long time ago, but I don't have that access to one of those anymore. And you can see that, yeah, these aren't quite as bad as you know, maybe what I'm doing over there, although these are definitely burnished for sure. But I've got some information for you too here, by the way. I can tell you that over time, the bluing has gone away, so to speak. I don't know if that's just because the engine operation temperature and, you know, decreasing and increasing and all that has happened. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. But I will tell you that it did happen. And so there's that. Now these rods here have been in an engine that was balanced. It was 30 over, and it did swing to 7,000 RPM without any trouble. So it's been abused and flogged and all that other good stuff. So I mean, I've seen rods like this blued many times, and you know, it works. Okay, and that's what I have now. What have I done to prevent that? Well, I'm using this torch right here, this little butane torch here. This is how I'm heating that up. I have actually attempted this heat gun here. It's the 1500 watt Black & Decker when you put it on setting number 2. And I actually had that thing set up, and I had it blowing on the rod, right at the end of the rod. And lo and behold, the same thing happened. It started bluing. I got my infrared thermographer here, or excuse me, thermometer, I guess, you know, laser pointer. You point it at it and it tells you the temperature. This thing, I think, goes up to 600 degrees. I can't remember. It's somewhere in here. It'll tell you, but I'm hearing everybody saying, well, you want to have about 400, 450 to 600 degrees on your rod end in order to be able to push the piston in. Okay, so I again use that electric heat gun over there. I was getting it, according to my thermometer here, I was getting it up to about 450 to 500 degrees. It took a while. I admit, it really took a while, because that's only 1500 watts and 110 volt. So it took a while, but it was getting it there. But man, it took like 15 minutes to heat one rod. I made this jig here. I put that rod in there. It was blued. In fact, it was this one right here. That one right there. And it was blued. I put the pin in, I pushed it in, and I got halfway through. And it locked up on me. I had to actually press it out. And then doing that, I kind of smashed, you know, a little bit of the piston here. And that created a problem where the pin wouldn't even go anymore. And I had to, you know, use a buffing pad and all this other shit and get it all reamed and buffed back out. And get it all back into position to do it again. And that's when I said, you know what, screw this. I've seen people use this, you know, torches, you know, etc. They're gonna get blued. I don't know. Some people say that this won't happen but I'm going to guess that it's at a different altitude. We are at about 3,400 feet of elevation where I'm at, and I'm just going to say that that has to be the reason why they can do it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to ask. I don't really care at this point. What I'm doing is working, and what everybody is saying online is not working here. Okay, now I don't know if it also has something to do with maybe the fact that this garage is only, 55 degrees too. I don't know. All I know is that using that heat gun did in fact get it warm to 450, 500 degrees, but it did not work. I got it halfway through, and I just don't want to deal with that because, again, I had to press it back apart. I had to ream the pin bushing area just to get the thing to float again. It was really kind of nerve-wracking because I thought I had ruined the piston, basically. But I did get it to work again, and we're just going to do it this way because, again, I see people do it all the time. I've done it before, and it's just been a long time since I have done it. And the sun and rod heater that I had used 25 years ago did the same thing. It blew those rods like that. And again, most of the time I've always in my life worked on Ford products. I've done some Chevys, I've done some Chryslers and Pontiacs and whatnot. Helped a couple friends with Buicks and Oldsmobiles even. But my point is that I've not noticed anything out of the ordinary of what I'm doing right now. Okay, so explaining what I have done and what I've attempted to do and how it turned out, and now I'm going to go and show you how I'm doing this to make this work in my environment right here, right now. Okay, all right. So as I told you before, I took and pressed all the old rods out, if you watched my other video, and rod bolts that is, and I put in the ARPs, put those in there. They fit great, awesome. And then each particular rod is numbered. This is a factory marking there. And then I went ahead and marked each piston, so that way, again, for diagnostic purposes, it might become important. I also marked with a marker here, number 6, so just kind of because I was weighing everything, right? I kept the pin with the piston when I was weighing everything, so I want to make sure everything's the same here. So that's how I'm keeping things in track. So let's explain this real quick. The number 6, for example, right? Okay, so on a Ford, small block Ford, when you roll it over here, let's take a look at that. So over here on the passenger side, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that is how Ford lines up their basically their numerical designation for firing order, basically. Okay, now when you flip it over, right, and you take a factory Ford apart or whatever, most of the time what you're going to find, at least I've never found it any different, but what you're going to find is you're going to find the rod here will be stamped pointing upwards where you can see it, number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way out here to 8. But that will not, I repeat, will not coincide with the firing order. Okay? So basically what it's saying is when you look at those rods, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8, right? It will not be it will not coincide with the actual firing order or numerical designation for the actual engine hole. Okay, so I'm keeping it. Now I suppose I could change it. I suppose I could, make this one, number 1, and this one number 5, etc., etc. Well, actually, this would be number 1, this one number 5. But anyway, my point is, I could change that around if I wanted to do that, and then it would say 1, 5, and 2, 6, or 2, 7. Sorry, 2, 7, etc. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to confuse myself, which I'm already doing. But anyway, what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure that these are all lined up to where they're facing upwards and to where the notch of the piston is facing forward. So this right here is facing forward. So when this piston goes in, that notch faces forward to the front of the engine, and then you want that rod placed on there to where when you have it, when you flip the engine over, you can actually read the number here. Because if you flip the rod over, well, then it's down here and you can't even see it. So that's what I'm trying to do for myself for setting everything up. And with that being known, then here we go. We're going to be doing this here. So this one here happens to be, once again, number 6. So here's what I do. Let's see here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 will be this one right here. Okay. And we want it to where when this thing is sitting right there and the piston down in the hole like that, you can see number 6 sticking up. And the front of the engine will be that way where my finger's pointing. Okay. So when we come over here to install this, right? When we come over here to install this, we saw that the notch is right there. You can kind of see it right there. Okay. So where my finger's pointing to the front, so it's going to go in here like this. Okay. So you're going to have the number 6 sitting right there, pointing just like this, just like that. All right. So I'm going to set the camera up here. I'm going to try anyway, so I can kind of demonstrate how I'm doing this. But basically, I will be heating that end up, and this is what I've been doing. Whatever, it works for me, and it's worked for a lot of people. I've been heating this thing up until it starts to turn blue. Because I've not only did I try that one, the electric gun, but I did try this, and I tried to be nice the one time, and the same damn thing happened. I actually got halfway, maybe even 3/4 of the way in before it froze up on me. So now I'm just going overboard, I guess, if you want to call me that. I don't care. It works. I am heating that up until it goes blue. Gets, pretty blue. And then I keep going for about another 10 to 15 seconds, and you'll notice that actually the bluing kind of sort of goes away. I don't know how to explain it, because when you first hit this with the torch, what you're going to see is you're going to see it sweating. You're going to see the moisture come out of this thing. And then it takes, a good amount of time before it finally starts to, actually start to brown, and then it starts to blue. And then within 10 or 15 seconds after that, you'll notice that it starts to come back to the gray again in a way. It's really hard to explain, and I really doubt the camera's probably even going to show it. But that's, being in person, that's what I see. And that's when I know it's time. And then I'll go ahead and drop it down in there. I got the pin in place, and I grab this thing right here, stick it inside that pin, and I push until I snap that sucker up against my little stop here that I made right there. And of course, this piston here will be clamped in here. So I'm going to pause the camera, get it set up, and I'm going to get all that ready, and I'll fire up the heat and make a demonstration. Okay, we're back. You can see here that I don't know, you can't really see, the camera's in a bad spot, but I'm basically going to be using this right here, push inside this pin right here, and when I'm ready, I will put this down in here like so and push it in against the stop. That's pretty much how I do this. Okay, so let me get the old torch fired up here. Okay, torch fired up here, and I got it held in my hand how I want it, and we'll just start heating it. I don't know if you can see it sweating, moisture coming out. Trying to roll it in all different directions to get the heat to go as much as possible, on as evenly as possible. I mean, one could just sit here and just aim at it and let it get hot in one spot. It would probably work, but that isn't how I would like to do it. Okay, we definitely got the moisture out of it. Really sure what you're seeing in the camera here, but it's starting to turn a little color. Now we're starting to brown a little bit. And believe me, I tried to do this the easy way, as far as, like, you know, little by little, try to learn, you know, try to, you know, not be so aggressive with the heat, but it never worked. I could not get the thing pressed in all the way. Alright, now we're starting to see it blew up pretty good. But then, you'll notice here, look at this. I hope the camera's getting it, but you can kind of see that it's going back to gray. Made a color. I didn't know. Okay, anyway. Here we go. Yep, see, it's kind of going back to gray. And that should be it right there. Should be ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I got it in the right proper way. Yes, I do. Put this right here. Get it lined up as much as I can. There we go, found it. And now it's locked up. So, grabbing this real quick. You can see here, I can barely move it. It's starting to cool already. That was actually, I did that one probably not quite as hot, actually, because I can move it already. Usually it takes a little bit longer before it's actually ready to move. But you look down in there, and you can see how it went from blue, and it turned it kind of sort of back to a gray color. So there you go. That's how I actually heat the pin, or the rod. Have the pin right here, and just kind of this, just a big old torque socket. I mean, it's the main thing is that it fits in there, and I can push on it. And I can push hard. You'll notice that my jig is all clamped down to the table and everything. You don't want anything to move, okay? And one other thing that I will say before I finish here, just about ready to finish up the video here. One thing I will say is you have to kind of be careful, because when this thing is hot and you slam that all the way in, this is, you know, the actual rod is still loose. It can actually slide back. In other words, you know, you've got it up, you know, when you push that pin in, it's going to take the rod and it's going to put it right up against the side of this part of the piston here, right? And then you slam it in, you're holding the pin there, right? And then you got this rod, and because it's able to move, if you're not you know, functioning in your brain, if you're not paying attention, it can actually slide back over and hit the other side, and then your little stop over here is kind of useless, because now you're off. And then when you go to take it out of here and you actually go to you know, slide it back to the center, well, then your pin's going to pop out on the one side. So, by the way, it took me about 2 times of adjusting that stop to get this thing centered perfectly. And it's pretty good. As you can see there, that's about center, and you can see how it's nice and flush there, and it's pretty nice and flush there. But my first ones are not. This is one of them right here. You can see there, I kind of move it back over, but you can see it's still sticking out just a little bit. But you know what? Nobody, and I mean nobody's ever going to notice that, and it doesn't change the balance of the engine if that pin is not perfectly centered per se, okay? But you want to be as good as possible, because what you definitely don't want is, you definitely don't want a situation where when you install the piston and the rod assembly into the engine, it's now centered on the crank, and you flip it over, because I will have to pay attention to this. I'm going to have to, you know, flip the engine over after I install each and every one of these, to make sure, in fact, that when it is actually centered on the crank, like it should be, that the rod here is not actually rubbing anywhere on either side of that piston. We need to make sure that it's at least got, you know, a good, you know, 1/16 or so of an inch clearance on either side. At least on, you know, well, on either side, but obviously it's going to be bigger than that. You're going to have, if you are perfectly centered, you should have over 3/16 of an inch on each side with this set of pistons, that is, okay? That's what I measured when I put my micrometer down here, okay? But you need at least a 1/16 of clearance on one side, okay? And once you do that, you're good. So there you go. That's how you put rods on here at home, the old poor man's way, okay? Like and subscribe. Come back for more. We're going to finish this whole thing up. We're going to get it running. And well, it's going to take a little while, I guess. But it's going to get running. You're going to see this thing from start to finish. And you'll get to know whether or not this is a good idea, a bad idea, or, you know, whatever you want to do. Or I might take it apart and I might, you know, do it the right way. I mean, like, completely, like, you know, grind the crank and all that kind of stuff. But I doubt it. We're gonna run this as much as I can like this, and I have high confidence that it will run, no problem. All right, again, like, subscribe, come on back. Thank you much, guys. We'll see you later. Bye bye.